Hi team, how you doing? Dave Glaser from Fit Life Champions in Denver, Colorado. I want to quickly walk through why we would not program this particular exercise for our Jiu-Jitsu athletes here in the studio. This exercise is called the single leg V-up, and I want to demonstrate first, and then I'll come back and I'll explain just a little bit more about why we use this exercise so infrequently to train our athletes. So we begin by lying flat on our back, arms straight out overhead, and we might go alternating, opposite arm, opposite foot, right? Which from the appearance, you might think that that's a pretty good core exercise to be doing as an athlete. However, we must consider how often we are in hip flexion as Jiu-Jitsu athletes. How often do we sit in a chair all day at work, and then we come to our evening classes and we're trying to get the most out of our hour and a half, and then our sparring sessions. So what happens if we're shortening that hip flexor all day, every day, and then we come into the gym and we're working on a single leg, single arm hip flexion exercise? Now we might see some short-term gains from this particular exercise, but we find that we don't apply it to our athletes because it kind of puts us into a disadvantaged position when we're training on the mat. What we like to focus on instead is a knee to elbow connection, just like we do in the sport. The less space that we have available for our opponent to get an arm or a knee or a leg into that area, the better it is for our athletes to perform on the mat. So let me quickly demonstrate a different exercise and then a stretch that will help you actually lengthen out that hip flexor. So imagine that you have a partner holding down your toes. I'm going to cross my hands across my shoulders and place my knees, my elbows to my knees, and my partner is letting me down slowly. And then they pull us up quickly. Again, we're going to slowly lower our body down to the ground so that we can maintain that knee to elbow connection that is so important in our sport. As you can see, I did this without a partner. But what we do when we do have somebody holding our feet, slowly count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, and then they push your feet back down. We're going through the full range motion, we're going through a length of time for the core to stay activated, and it actually puts it here more in the transverse and the rectus abdominis plus the obliques as opposed to the hip flexor. But we want to lengthen the hip flexor now that we're done with that exercise. So in each knee, 90 degrees, maybe that front foot slightly out in front of us, we're going to drive our hips into a long stretch of the quadricep behind us. We can bring that foot back in and grab that rear foot for an even better stretch of the quad. However, we want to focus on this section of our hip flexor. Both hands on the front knee. Open up and look back at our hand. Just a couple of reasons why and why not the single leg V-up might apply to your Jiu-Jitsu athletes in your gym. A couple alternatives, as well as a nice long hip flexor stretch at the end of your workday, at the end of your Jiu-Jitsu and your sparring session, each and every time that you come into the studio. Thanks again, Dave Glaser from Fit Life Champions and Colorado Reserve.